I just started recording, so
Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
don't forget to do that. Yeah, I mean, but like we're supposed to be our own television production stations now. What?
Ew, I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm like, I mean, it's fine, I guess, but this is not what I got into this for
No.
at all. I want to think up funny things to say and cute little songs and like some pathos, some storytelling, but if I've got to like deal with wires and shit, that
No, it pulls you out of the moment.
I know it's terrible.
I just had a really hilarious thought that I'm glad we're recording about. I was just like, that's why it's so important for us to do serious research on sex toys because they cannot pull you out of the moment. They have to be able to like easily turn on, not be like, they have to be because that's sometimes the problem. And I'm really glad that people have dedicated their times and life to solving this important issue that like your sex toy should just be able to be like, no, you're not worried about wires, how it looks. You're just doing it.
Yeah, it's just like boom, here it goes. Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I mean, what if there were a lot more sex toy manufacturers and a lot less, weapons manufacturers?
Oh my God. Can you imagine?
What if Lockheed Martin put all their energy into making people come?
What if we had a war on frigidity?
Ah,
Although that's kind of like blamey, isn't it? I need a better word.
well, I mean, but okay, maybe not a war, but a battle.
A battle. Right, because that's the thing that appeal. This is I know that we're have we started your show yet? Is this all part of it?
No, I mean, who knows? Who knows? We'll see what happens. But we haven't done the intro part yet.
My biggest beef is that we turn a war on everything and that it's so aggressive to use war technology when we're like we're going to declare a war on poverty, and
Yeah.
it's like, well, why don't we wage peace? Why don't we start a peace on, you know a peace on hunger and or something? I don't know.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
hi Rain, how
Hi,
are
how are
you?
you? I'm so glad to be sitting here with my amazing friend, the songwriter, the musician, the multimedia artist, Ellen Cherry. Are okay, scene. We're going under Ellen Cherry for this, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, I have my key on.
Okay. Is
I'm
that
ready.
how I know? Is that how I know?
That's how I've been wearing the key since 2008, and that was kind of like me putting on my uniform. Like every time I would perform, that's the one moment that I have before performance where I'm just like, okay, yeah, it's time to slip into the skin. So yeah, you are with me, Ellen Cherry,
Excellent,
your
excellent.
friend.
It's so good. I think it's just so, I mean, I think of you as Ellen all the time. And even though I know your non-stage name, I'm like, I still have a hard time like using it
Right.
when it's time.
Maybe if I get a haircut or something.
I
Maybe
mean,
if I'll get a haircut and I'll be like, my new name is this.
I adapt pretty well. Like most time, like, especially, I think maybe this is influenced by being in the trans community for so long, where somebody is like, I'm, this now, and I'm like, I tend to click over pretty quickly,
Right.
without many bumps. Occasionally, you're always gonna like, fuck something up, but yeah, like I think that I think it's great that people get to choose names. I've said this for years. Like, I think one of the best things the internet did was allow people to choose their own name.
Right.
You
Like
know?
it wasn't like you had to show your driver's license to join terrible face space or whatever. You could just say, this is who I am. I mean, there was a time when they were policing it and it wasn't, if it wasn't a proper name.
Yeah.
And that's why in my Facebook page, my personal page, it says Ellen Cherry. And then in parentheses, it says Ellen Cherry and I'm just too lazy to go back and fix it. But like, because I also don't care in the scheme of things. But for years, it wouldn't allow me to be lowercase letters.
Yeah.
And there's a very playful part of me that the reason why when I chose this name, you and I have talked about this before, like the idea of creating my own sister, my own twin, a braver version of myself that would be on stage and performing, that I I distinctly did it with lowercase letters because I wanted to, in a way, keep my ego in check and remember that I was serving a larger purpose, which is artistic expression. But also, this, it was just sort of like ridiculous fun to have copy editors be so pissed at like having to correct it. And I'd be like, I'm not claiming to be bell hooks. I'm not claiming to be E. E. Cummings, but I am saying like respect that somebody has chosen a name and a spelling for themselves and that it's meaningful to them, because it was meaningful to me. And stop giving me like people, some copy editors just refused. Like they were just like, no, I'm going to capitalize it because it's a proper name and it's going to confuse. I got an email from a woman 2 years ago because there was a mention of a show I did in Oklahoma, and she wrote me an email about how it was frustrating because they didn't explain in the article why the letters were lowercase, and how wrong of it was for me to not like make sure that that was forefront information, that it was on purpose because it was so misleading. Like she took the time out to send me a mean email, and I
Wow.
was like, we got to get you something to do, girl.
Yeah.
Like you got to get something to do besides send me an email because this is not important.
Yeah. It's so interesting what gets people bent out of shape. You never
Oh
know.
man, it's interesting what gets me bent out of shape. Sometimes I look at the stuff I'm bent out of shape about and I'm just like, oh God. Just give it a rest.
Oh my God. I can't even imagine. What was I mad about this time? Well, let's not say a year ago, because we know what we were mad about this time a year ago. It's been a
Right.
year. We have been a year into this. Like now.
T-
Uh
Today is my year anniversary of wearing a mask. I started wearing a mask on March 7th last year.
dang.
Yeah.
Last year, on this day, March 7th, I was in the studio all day with my band.
Oh,
And I had played
making
the night
music.
before with them. We had played a big show and then gone in the studio, and I haven't hung out with them since.
Oh God. And you were just freely breathing on each other, not thinking anything of it. You probably hugged them. You probably held them in your arms.
Yes, it's not that I wasn't thinking of it. We had just played a show. We had just played a sold out show at Metro Gallery. And
Yeah.
like the whole time, I was just like, is this like, I really hope nobody gets anything from this. But like, we were still like only beginning to hear about cases. It was like,
Right.
oh, we just found one. We found one in Portland or whatever it was, Seattle, some.
Oh my God.
Um, but yeah, I mean, but the whole time, like I remember at that show, somebody came up because it was a Bernie benefit, and so somebody from the organizing side came and said, "Oh, I want you to meet whoever," and so I met whoever, and I shook his hand, and I was just like, I remember coming away from that handshake, and I'm like, wait, I think I'm probably not going to do that again for a while. I mean, wow, what a
I
time.
wrote an essay last year because I was completely isolated for almost 50 days starting in at the lockdown, the Maryland shutdown, March 16th. And I remember writing this like really desperate essay about like the end of touching. I was just like, is this the end of touching? Because I've had this like fraught relationship with it as, and you know this as a performer, that people, I've been in the audience where I felt so much from what the person expressed that I feel an intimacy with them that they may not feel with me, because their performance drew these things out of me that I'm just like, I feel that attraction. And people have felt that towards me. And sometimes I'm in the mood for it. Like, yeah, like let's have a hug. Let's, share an even closer intimacy. And then other times I'm just like, no, I don't want to touch you at all. I don't want anyone to touch me. And then so I was just like, when I thought about the end of it and like, is this pandemic going to be the end of just like casually touching strangers? My mind immediately reeled back through all the times I had rejected touch, from strangers. And I was like, and because I was raised in a religious tradition that emphasizes guilt and shame to manipulate behavior, I felt guilty about it. I was just like, I should feel bad for rejecting all of that touch. Where I know now that I'm like, that was my autonomy being like, no, sometimes you don't want that person to touch you, and it's okay. You can say, no, I don't know you, don't touch me. Or even, I know you, don't touch me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's what a strange, wild ride we've been on. And also I was talking with my co-host in my podcast, Why Aren't You Famous, Why Aren't You Famous podcast, Andrew Grimm. We were talking the other day about the violence that I think is inherent in the world, in the word normal,
Mm.
that I've been thinking about this for this entire year, because almost immediately this time last year, things were about to get super fucked up, right? For everyone. Like, we basically became witness to a national crime. First of all, we've been witnessing a crime happening for months and months and months against people. And then a global reckoning with nature, basically, which is what this feels like. And yet there was this rush to go back to normal. And normal was being battered around like this weapon. Like, that is the most important thing, is to go back to normal. And I'm like, do you guys realize that normal sucked for everybody? Normal was great for like 3 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's it. Stop trying to bludgeon us with normalcy.
Yeah.
Because first of all, normal is boring. It's boring.
Yeah.
It's really, it's really, really boring. Um, I think what you're talking about, maybe some people had confused it with contentment. Like, contentment is what we're seeking. But
Mhm.
normal, there's a baseline that's normal for you that's different than for me.
Yeah.
And why should your normal fit my normal? Why should my normal coerce your normal? It just started to feel like I sort of deeply understood how violent, and also as a person who had used that word before, I've
Mhm.
used the word normal to describe situations, and to really think back and think, like, in the future, I want to really, policing is too strong a word, but be cognizant of how I use that word.
Yeah. Be conscious of it. I mean, I think that's the
Yeah,
thing. Like, I use it too. It's an easy word to use. I mean, it's just like a quick, a quick concept. Like, but like, what are the nuances of what you're saying, right? I think that's
right.
maybe what you're getting at. Like, is it about comfort? Is it about ordinariness? Is it about like lack of conflict? Like what are you saying when you say normal, right? And and I feel there's a joke I've always done in my stand-up set, which is that so I'm like a queer trans lesbian person or whatever, and I'm like, so I do jokes around that because it's hilarious to do that. It's hilarious to be that. And and I often take this path that goes like, well, I talk to a lot of people about it because they've like, ooh, it's exotic or whatever. I'm like, actually, like, it's all of you like straight people that like have friends in high school that I think is fucking weird. Like, I don't understand you people. It's bizarre. Like, you're not normal to me at all. My
Right.
normal is my normal, and and I like my normal for the most part, right?
Right. Consider, if you consider like wearing Dockers as a fetish behavior, you're like, yeah, like everyone who shops at Target is now like participating in something that you would consider like, that's not normal to me. Just like, why? It's all the same color, khaki.
Oh,
Do you want to be khaki?
remember normcore when that was a thing? Oh my God, I don't even know
We
how.
are a creative species.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So, let's talk about what you've been doing. What's your
Yes.
pandemic been like?
My pandemic has been full of dizzying heights and despairing lows, just like everyone else. When people ask me the question casually on the street, which happens never, I say, mostly okay. The pandemic has been going mostly okay. I have so many privileges, levels of privilege, that I just want to recognize right at the top. I have been able to save money for periods of time like this. I also work in a very creative field, which means I have a lot of outlets. I shifted because I've been primarily a live performer for 25 years, and I've been shifting slowly over time to doing a lot more movie scoring. So I scored another film this summer, and that helped support me as well. Um, I also owned the fact that as a live performer, I did have the right to claim to be unemployed, because as a live performer, it was not necessarily my job to figure out the fact that I could just seamlessly translate what I do as a live performer to this format, because it doesn't, it's not the same at all. And so it took me a while to get accustomed to the idea that like, it's okay to say that I'm unemployed, because I think I have a lot of internalized shame about that, that it's like my own lack of ingenuity to not figure out how to be employed as
Mm,
a live performer during a pandemic. But I did, um, and you know me pretty well, so you know that I can't sit still. So to that end, what I decided to do was on April 1st for 40 weeks in a row, from April 1st to December 30th, I did a Wednesday therapy session for myself on Facebook and Instagram in front of other people, which um, the topics ranged from, you know, like ridiculous life with guinea pigs, because I adopted 2 guinea pigs during the pandemic, to suicidal ideation. So it was like a pretty wide ranging series of weeks, but I played one song that I had written and delved into it. So I got through 40 songs in my catalog. I got to realize that I don't really like live stream performances.
mhm,
It's very, it's not for me. I know some people who succeed at it so well and are able to really feel the audience through a camera like that. I'm not one of those people. And so what it caused me to do is really rethink about how I wanted, not really rethink, but to deeply dive into a personal pivot, because I've been doing live performance for 25 years, and to I've been slowly shifting away from making the prime, like the most of my living from live performing, to doing film scores, composing music for puppeteers and puppet shows, working on jingles, teaching lessons, and then creating my own performances that have to do with like what I would consider like acute performances, where it's at a theater for 3 days in a row. I also actually joined a theater troupe in 2019 and did a run of a couple months of a theater program with them. So this was a long shift to realize that I think I needed something more definite to kind of corral this project that I've been working on. Because the one thing I haven't mentioned is um, I've been collecting material for the last 8 years in response to a violent trauma that I experienced in 2013. It was a car crash, and it changed the course of my life. And I've been collecting all these materials, and I needed a mentor. So I asked somebody named Rahne Alexander to mentor me. And she had this incredible advice. She was like, I really think that you should consider going back to school and getting a master's degree. So I applied and I'm going to school, which is like one of my favorite places to be.
yay.
And I want to thank this person who we both know, Rahne Alexander, for mentoring me through that process, um, and deepening our friendship. Uh, so that's been a huge pivot for me. You know, that's a lot of what I've been working on in the pandemic. I also have been focused on something that I think is going to help me going forward into school as well, which is a subscription service. You have a Bandcamp page for Santa Labrada. I have one for Ellen Cherry. Um, it's this concept of micro patronage,
Mm,
where a person who loves the arts but may not have millions of dollars can support artists by with a small monthly stipend. And so I have this Bandcamp page, and what I've realized is as I build it and the number of subscribers grows, it's it's not passive income because I actively create things that are specifically for the subscription service. But as I build it, I start to see how I can make that into a routine of my arts practice and really allow the subscribers to witness that arts practice. And I'm doing it, like, as I go forward, I'm doing it much more restrictively, because I used to share all of that with social media, which was basically giving Facebook and Instagram free content. And you know, it's an ego shrinking exercise, because I don't get likes from my Bandcamp patrons.
right.
I hear back from them if they respond to something, but there's no immediate gratification like on Instagram or Facebook, where somebody like, you get 100 likes. Um, this feels more that I'm cultivating my own personal social media audience. And there's also a supportive exchange there where I feel like I'm giving something valuable to them, and then they're also able to help sustain me in a way that's like manageable for that person if it's only $4 a month or whatever they decide to make their subscription rate at. And the accumulation of it has paid half my rent for the last 6 months.
That's
So
amazing. That's so
yeah,
great.
and I want to build that. So like the pandemic has really helped me like step off the stage, and you know what all of that entails. It's not like any of us just walk on stage and we're like, somebody did our hair, somebody made sure we had 2 meals that day,
Yeah.
somebody drove us to the gig, somebody talked to the sound engineer and the lighting engineer, somebody sold all the tickets. No, we do all of that.
Mhm.
And this, like, I definitely feel like the pandemic has led me to really examine my relationship with that, because I wasn't enjoying it. Some people get a thrill from every single element of that and love everything around it. I was starting to get really cynical.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel that. I feel that. And I mean, I don't love doing all the PR, and I definitely don't love doing the tech stuff. Like it's just like I don't. We talked about this like at the very beginning of our little chat here. Like it's not something I don't have a lot of patience for it, and if it goes
Right.
wrong, I just want to like leave. Right? I'm like I don't know. I broke my mic again. Um, but like and we can do all these things, and I think it's you've done such a great job of shifting, I feel like.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Sometimes I wonder, but I think I'm doing okay.
I mean, I just feel like, everything that I've seen has looked so good, and it just, you've got a good energy with the camera, but like it's still not connecting with people. This show was supposed to be a live show, right? I was
Right.
supposed to be like with you on stage and da da da, and maybe you do a song, maybe, well, whatever. But like,
And we're missing part of the chemistry experiment, the audience. The audience is a vital part of this, because I would say something witty, sharp, hilarious. You would respond with your wit, and that interplay, the audience would be taken along on this amazing ride. They'd be full of joy. Some people would cry.
yeah,
We would be able to respond to that. It's it's a frictionless interaction in a lot of way.
yeah,
And like for me, the friction is where, I mean, not to get sexual again, that's where the feeling good comes in. Like that's where the good feeling comes in, is that friction. Like when you have a little bit of tension, when you have that push and pull, and I have not been able to make it work even responding to people live on live streams, because I find it incredibly distracting.
yeah.
And
Well, if it's a feed or it's like whatever, like I think it's nice when they send hearts and all that other stuff. Like I know that people are there.
right.
But like, and here's another thing. Like when you can see like there's like, I don't know, 30 people on the stream. That's great. But like, what if you do another stream and you get 60 people and now you're just like conscious, you're staring at the thing that you're performing into and you're looking at the number. You never did that before. You had a
No.
sense, you had a sense like, okay, so this is a light room, da, da. But you can also tailor your performance to that, you know?
Right.
If I'm gonna I end up with an audience that's just like, 5 or 10 people or whatever. I'm like, all right, let's just get real intimate and weird, and
Close.
like, let's just do whatever. Um, but if I'm playing to 150 people, I still have to pay to play to the back of the room,
Right.
right? And and the energy is going to be just a wholly different thing. And I mean,
And
unless
there's some people that do it so well.
yeah,
And there would be people, the first 3 weeks of that 40 weeks that I performed, I went back and I used it as a way to study myself. Like I thought, okay, after I do these half an hour concerts, I'm actually going to go back and like force myself to watch them and see what looks good and shape it, which is effective. But part of the reason that I love being on the stage is that there is, in the middle of the show, that sense of being completely nude, but also not self-conscious about it. Just being completely stripped bare and being the pure essence of how I can feel my voice lifting and I have control, but I'm also on the edge of uncontrol with it, or I'm reaching for something new. And when you're with an audience, especially the audience that's with you, a sympathetic audience is my favorite audience, right?
Yeah.
Like they're with you, they're caught up into it. And I developed that skill over years. Like for me, one of the things I noticed about my musical style changing is that in 2008, I did a rock and roll album, and then we played Artscape in Baltimore, big outdoor festival. And one of the, like a main stage, it was the one right across from Mike. It was my first big show in Baltimore, like at a festival like that. And my drummer couldn't make it. And so we played it acoustically. And like what I noticed was, oh, my voice is the thing that I want to convey. And it was 2008 that I really realized like that's the instrument. It's not my guitar. The thing I want to cultivate is the texture and understanding and being comfortable with my voice.
Mm.
And what I found over time is that the thing that music teachers have told me for years, that the rest is some of the most important part of the music, that the breath, the pause, the allowing somebody to come in closer to that intimate moment, even in loud cacophonous music, when the pause happens and everyone joins in again, it's so much more powerful. um, that becomes cacophonous in a room like this,
Mhm.
that silence, because there's no response at the end. There's no hearing a noise that when you take a breath in that moment that somebody coughs, or it's just a different beast. And
Yeah.
there are people that can do it really, really well. And even what my point was long ago is that studying myself, I realized that the effective thing is like right now I'm looking at you. But if I really wanted to communicate to the audience, I would be looking here directly into the camera, and I would be pointing directly to it and making sure that I was making eye contact with it. And so when I would perform, I would put a little post-it note right there that said, look here, to remind myself to make eye contact, which is something I never had a problem with in live performance.
Yeah.
I was like the queen of eye contact. I'd be like, "You're the next verse. You're the next verse," and drawing people in that way. This way, it's so I can't even see the camera, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to look into it. And yeah,
Really, where are you looking? Like, am I really looking at you? Do the people that are going to watch this, do they think I'm looking at you right now? I don't know.
right.
I hope so. But like, still, I mean, I can still just like talk to the camera, but then that's weird,
It is weird because I want to look at your face. I want to look at
right?
like that's who I'm talking to, is to you.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
Oh, I miss talking to people. I miss hanging out.
right, and also just seeing people's shoes.
Oh my God.
I miss, I miss people seeing like the shoe part of it. That's another pandemic change for me. I um I have so many clothes that are made for standing still and performing at a microphone, shoes and pants. And I have decided to get rid of all of that because I'm just like, I'm basically just going to wear the most comfortable pants possible and tennis shoes everywhere, because those shoes were hurting my feet, and I wasn't like walking around the stage in them anyway. I was just basically like standing and looking pretty. And
Hmm.
in my mom, there's a part of me that's just like, it's because the patriarchy that I did that. But I have to accept that it was less of me like, I really like those shoes. Like I have a thing for shoes, and I don't get to see anybody's shoes now.
Yeah, I don't even wear I don't wear any of my shoes. Yeah. I got all these like nice
I'm not
socks,
even wearing shoes.
got slippers, but yeah, I'm not all my shoes. Yeah, it's bananas. I've worn basically I've got one pair of moccasins and one pair of winter boots, and I bought them on the same trip to Savers, like
Savers.
3 months before pandemic hit. I go to Savers, I bought these two pairs. They're the only shoes I've worn all year.
That's true. And that's like another thing that I think that I'm hopeful that people can understand, having lived with their stuff now for a year, that we can all understand how much less we need to have, like, and just in terms of stuff.
Yeah.
I definitely have,
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
for sure. If I didn't
And how
have,
deeply I crave routine. Like I need routine. And in the last 2 months, I finally have gotten a routine that I feel like is manageable.
yeah. Like if I hadn't had grad school, I would have gotten rid of so much more of my shit. And and it's funny because for about 10 years I worked a festival that happened in the spring. So like it always happened in like early May. So like
Right.
our crunch time was like March through mid-May every year. So for 10 years I didn't do any spring cleaning at all, like at all. 10 years. And so as soon as it's like, and now that I don't do that anymore, like every spring comes around, I'm just like, give me a dumpster. Just throw shit out. Just take it. Get it out here. Get out of here.
Right.
I'm hoping that I get to do that this year. I'll finish this program and start throwing shit out my.
That's right. When do you graduate?
So it'll be in May. I don't have my calendar in front of me, but the graduation day will be like mid-May, May 13th, 14th, 15th, somewhere in there. Um, but as you know, this will go up and as part of the thesis exhibit, and that goes April 13th through May 7th.
Cool.
I turn in my final written thesis to the grad school on the 1st of May. So
So how are we doing on your questions so far? Because we talked about pandemic. I know we're supposed to talk about maternal things.
yeah. So yeah, let's so I just to bring it back to the thematic stuff of the show. So I'm talking about my maternal relationship, my mother who had MS. So there's like abilities or abilities, disabilities, and debilities that are part of the whole thing. And self-training as an artist, that's a component of our relationship, me and my mother's relationship. And also just like mobility, moving around, going places. Um, and it's like a lot of this is animated by the fact that like I was conceived when my parents, like when my father was in the military,
Oh,
and
wow.
he was stationed in Massachusetts at the time. So I was conceived in Massachusetts. And then they drove back to Utah after he got released, and then I was born in Utah, and then we went to California, and then one day I was like, I hate California. I moved to Baltimore. So like I've like always had this joke that I'm a transcontinental. I was an East Coaster trapped in the body of a West Coaster. Um, so, but like all these
I
like
feel that totally. I totally understand. Go ahead. Yeah.
like like all these like movements have like been like there's even been like this country crisscross in this like very like tangential sort of a way, and like just my experiences around accessing things, being able to get places, do things. I don't drive, I've never really been a driver. um, Here and there I have, but like so there's just always been these like tensions around like how I get places, how to go places. So um it's a big spaghetti mess of like themes, but like anything that you might want to talk about along those lines.
Man, it just touches off so much. So you were attracted back to the East Coast because this is where you, like the universal hum delivered you onto the planet in consciousness in Massachusetts, basically. And so the consciousness had to draw you back to the East Coast. Like you were drawn here. And I understand that because like, I don't know, I want people to examine their own movements around or lack of movement and what that could mean to them, because I think about how deeply attracted I am to water. And I was born and raised in Plano, Texas, which is far away from any meaningful water, bodies of water. However, the intercoastal waterway that went from Canada all the way to the Gulf eons ago when there were dinosaurs, most of Texas was under 20 feet of water or something. Somebody will correct me, I'm sure. But it was underwater. And that's why they find all these fossil records of like aquatic animals in Texas. And to be a person who's so deeply attached and attracted to water. I swim all the time. I do long distance open water. I love water is my most meditative space to view and to be in. Like we are attracted to, I think, the things where it has something to do with our past, like our origin story. And I'm not saying that I was a dinosaur but anyway, that's a whole other topic. But the idea of mobility, it always it always kind of shocks me that you when you remind me that you don't drive, because I think of Baltimore, where we live, as a place where you can get around by bus and bike and walking. It's a very walkable city, but it's not as if the public transportation is like super great, cheap, reliable. It's not like places my I think my best experience with public transportation being super efficient is in Germany. And it's like you could rely on trains and get everywhere in cities. And if you needed to rent a car, it was not difficult. Um, in America, we have such a car culture.
Yeah.
And I think about how driving has shaped my entire life, because I've spent so much time in cars on tour to other places. I used to spend probably a total of 4 to 5 months on the road, just away from Baltimore, because I've lived here for 21 years. Um, this is in 20 years, this is the first summer and winter that I've spent in Baltimore without leaving. Like I usually am gone for like big chunks of the summer and then gone over the holidays. And I wasn't this year. And it was amazing to like explore the city. But that type of mobility is really interesting to me, and also to think about the restriction of movement because of the pandemic.
Mhm.
There's a real fear of like leaving. I live in a 1 bedroom studio apartment, and for months I would never before felt anxiety about walking out literally my front door, which is right there behind the bathroom door, into the hallway, because my neighbors weren't wearing masks for months. And I'd be like, I'm trapped in my house. Like there's bars on the window. I can't even like walk out the window. And how minor that mobility, like how I can mentally shrink that when I think about somebody like your mother. I did a puppet show. Anna Fitzgerald created a puppet show about her mentor, Judy Finelli, who had MS. She was a circus performer and had MS, and her body started to degrade. She could no longer do the things that her mobility started to decay. And she eventually, the story that Anna told in this puppet show is that Judy eventually accepts that her body has these limitations now and discovers skydiving as a way of like experiencing that bodily freedom again. Yeah, it's a beautiful wordless half an hour long puppet show. And that was really the first time I'd ever really even thought about MS. I've never known anyone personally with MS.
Mhm.
And now that I've had that experience of like understanding the disease a little bit better through an art form like puppetry, and talking to Anna about it, and then doing and reading about it as we like as she made the show, and I worked on some of the music. I did not compose the music. I was the performer of it. Um, it just I'm reminded of how grateful I am that my body in this form, with some of the lack of care that I've given it over 45 years, still works. Like I have tripped. I dream that I'm like a graceful person. Like I even waited tables for a long time because I'm just like, I'm totally graceful. I have tripped so many times in such spectacular fashion, and I'm surprised how many times I have not completely smashed my face and just like disabled myself, or in that moment. And I kind of like stumble and then like realize in that moment how grateful I am that I have my legs are working still and I can walk to places. Mobility is a huge part of like the physical thought of that is really important to me, especially because of this car wreck. I lost the use of my left arm for acutely for about 8 months, which as a guitar player, this was devastating. And then really with pain for probably 3 to 4 years. Like it was probably 2017, 2018 when I stopped having chronic pain in my shoulder, because I have 2 plates and 8 screws holding the bones together. And that broke open my heart and mind and empathy in such a way to people who have chronic pain and different abilities with their bodies. that I'm just like constantly amazed. I'm just like, whenever I see somebody who has a differing ability to walk or run or pick things up with their hands, and then also the invisible part of it, if they don't have the ability to process things the same way that I might do, or what we might consider normal,
Sure.
um, that direct experience I'm really grateful for, because it gave me this idea of just like, oh wait, just slow your roll. Like, this person is experiencing the world in their body, which is completely different from the frustrations that you have, that I have with my body,
Yeah.
or the limitations I feel. And then like the social, like the word mobility is really charged for me, because I think about the mobility of what being an artist has meant for me over the last 25 years. I have collaborated and been in concert with and conversation with incredibly wealthy people and incredibly impoverished people. Like, everyone on the spectrum, I feel like being an artist is this passport to like this, to being able to connect to anybody in our economic caste system, basically. And what a freedom that is, to know that I can walk into any room. Like, it's a privilege to say that because of my arts practice and my habit of thinking, I have the potential to relate to every person in here if I'm just quiet and listen and do what I'm supposed to be doing first, which is witnessing.
Mhm.
And I don't know a lot of other professions that can do that. You and I can have a conversation with literally anyone.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Because even in the ways that I've been thinking about, um, economic mobility and class mobility, I've been really like, looking at like, the failures of the American dream and how like it's embedded into, uh, especially like how my family moved west, to California. So like there's like all those kinds of like gold rush ideals that are still kind of like tied up in there. But like, but I think you're right. I think you're really, really onto something here. Like I think art does allow for some of that. I mean, not it's not like everybody's going to be able to get rich because they're an artist or anything like that. That's not, I think, what you're
Oh,
saying
no.
at all. But like,
No.
it puts you in a position where you can like, I mean, it's like what the John Waters Pecker movie was all about, where it's just like, here's this thing, and like you're just making these things, and suddenly like, da 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 da, here's like everybody coming in, uh, and they want a piece. They want a piece for whatever their purposes are,
Right.
um, and whatever. I think that that's like, it'll be interesting to see how much of that dream kind of carries forward in like in the larger culture. I think in the next 5, 10, 20 years.
I am not looking forward to is not the right word, but I'm really curious to see how much of the work that we do as artists starts to get interpreted as trauma healing work for the general public, because every single person is experiencing this, you know a crime against our country, first of all, like
Yeah.
criminal activity, the level of negligence, in the face of this virus. But like, the fact that we have the coming, I see it as a coming mental health crisis that follows this. And it's not necessarily just because of the pandemic, but because of the massive amount of reckoning that we've done with the virus, racial and economic justice, that there's a, a higher percentage of people who look like me that are starting to unspool their internalized racial superiority in a really profound way, and having to deal with like the guilt and shame, and worrying about like internalizing that, and understanding that there's communities you can talk about that with, and then learning more about other people's experiences. But also, the biggest, most important thing is like the climate reckoning that we are
Yeah.
experiencing. There is going to be We are going to be dealing with grief and loss as a real subject for the rest of our lives. And artists are at the forefront of helping people process trauma
Mm.
and mental health and grief and loss. And also, like, you with your comedy, your stand-up comedy routine, when I describe the processes and the, you know, the fantasies I have about the artwork that I want to come out of this for all of us, or that I hope or, you know, wish to, it's not dour and sad. When I talk about dealing with depression and trauma, I'm like, so much of it is frequently hilarious
Yeah.
because you realize how like I realize how seriously I've taken myself, and I'm just like, I used to be so boring to myself because I was so serious, like shut up and get silly, and how much joy can be a part of that process. Um, and not this like, gratitude is a wonderful word, but I think that it can also be wielded very negatively, because you're supposed to be grateful for everything and you should make gratitude lists, and we should be grateful for the fact that of those of us that have survived, or grateful for the person's life who we lost. You know, there's a place for that, I guess, but at the same time you can also just say this really fucking sucks, and like let's find the humor in how bad it sucks. Like this this is a shitty time to be a conscious sentient being, because you realize what we've done to other conscious sentient beings, and you're like, oh my god, just like think about whales alone. You know,
Yeah.
it's overwhelming. And I find that in those moments that I stop my like dancing, I stop moving, I stop my emotional dance, I stop, which is generally frequently about joy. And I don't even remember where I was going with this. I'm sort of rambling.
In the secure circuitous route.
I am going to secure to this route. Let's
uh,
bring it back to moms.
yeah.
When you said your mother, also, oh my God, it's 3:45. Wasn't this supposed to be 10 minutes?
Well, we're good. We're
Okay.
good.
um,
It'll be the epic interview.
okay. My mother, Lorraine, who I love incredibly, and I know she loves me, has had told me frequently in her life that she always thought she would be a writer,
Hmm.
and has wanted to sing and doesn't feel that she has a good singing voice. And so I have told her many times, I'm just like, well, you have three creative projects, collaborative projects with my father, my two sisters, and myself. And then my sisters have children. Those are their creative projects, but you've also collaborated in those projects, and that's very creative. That's why they call it procreation. I think, I don't know. Um, I'm guessing that's why they called it, because how artistic it is to make a child, not speaking from experience. Anyway, that it shouldn't surprise her that her maternal desire, or her personal desire for her own life to sing and to write, should have produced a songwriter, because it's actually in the title,
Hmm.
like songwriter.
Yes.
um yeah, so our relationship, it's, I love how supportive my parents have been for the last like 12 to 13 years. And it's not that they weren't supportive up until that point. And since we're specifically talking about mothers, my mother, I think, worried like most parents of artists, what is my child going to do for food? How will my child be financially independent? And my parents are also of a generation that equates financial security with emotional security.
Hmm.
And so for me to always be threading the line of like insolvency in a way, or nervous, or like if you had an emergency there, like a major medical emergency, that I would be broke, or homeless. um I'm trying to change that word, houseless, not homeless, houseless. um that I had to prove to them time and time again that my values are different, and that it's okay. I respect their values because I'm their child, and their values about wanting me to have financial security is important to them and their feelings of success and security. But I had to show them time and time again that my values were more on how much time do I have.
Hmm.
I don't want to work a straight job for my whole life, because if I did that, I wouldn't have the energy to dedicate to my arts practice. And that to me is more important for me. That's not true for everybody else.
Yeah.
So it's like explaining that to them over and over again. It finally clicked in like in the late, what are they calling them? The naughties,
The,
2008, the
yes.
oddies, the naughties, naughty
The naughty
oddies, I guess,
audience.
the oddies. Then in 2008, I think they actually sat in an audience at a show that I had curated at 2640 Space. And
Mm,
I had my friend Carl jumped rope, and there were poets, and it was like a circus kind of thing, and music, and these, it had 2 acts, and I'd written a little play. And I think my parents sat in that audience, sort of anonymous, with 200 people, and they felt the energy of that, and they were like, oh, I see how it's meaningful.
mhm.
I can see how that is giving her more security than a lot of money would.
Yeah,
And so I think my parents have evolved as
yeah.
parents of an artist, because I'm really the only practicing artist in my immediate family. They have evolved over time to like be accepting of the fact that my lifestyle is strange to them.
Hmm.
Like I don't get up and go to work from at an office from 9 to, I mean, who does anymore anyway? But
Sure.
like
Yeah. And I mean, and it's interesting too that, you're relating that story and just the power of it. But like getting back to this thing that we've lost by not having live bodies in the room with each other. You can't replicate that experience. You can't replicate that energy and like have your parents learn from the energy of the room,
right.
the meaningfulness of it. And like this, oh, it just, as a performer, it kills me that we don't have this right now.
It does seem, I was really sort of feeling cynical at the beginning of the year that like, and I'll be honest with you because I love you and I know you love me and you can accept the honesty. And hopefully anyone who's watching this will too, that there was a part of me that if we could avoid illness and death, wanted the pandemic to extend, because without the illness and the death, that I don't want that. I want to be very clear. But the concept of the pause, so we could figure out what the new paradigm was going to be, because we are, and I felt that way like all through the fall and through the early winter. I was just like, I'm not ready, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. And that's me not realizing that I don't have to engage. Like I don't have to go back to whatever I don't feel like doing again, which is
Mhm.
a luxury. But now I'm starting to feel excited about getting a vaccine. And I can tell you it's because every movie I've watched has had a karaoke scene or a fucking club mash scene. And I can just tell you that like if you were to videotape me watching these scenes, you would like see me like rise like I'm getting kissed passionately or something, because I'm just like, are those people pushing up against each other? Are they sweating on each other? When is that going to happen to me? When am I going to be like in a pit of people, like feeling the music and like, ah. And I crave it so much right now that I'm just like, when can I get a vaccine? When can everybody I know get a vaccine? Is Rituals going to open again so we can
Yeah.
like go there and like sweat on each other? Can I sing? Um, what's the song I've been practicing for karaoke? Oh, Kenny Loggins, Meet Me Halfway.
Nice.
Yeah.
It doesn't get any better than a Kenny Loggins soaring ballad.
The whole bridge is not even sung. The bridge is just this rock and guitar solo. And I was just like, that's really interesting, because maybe he just like ran out of words. But the lyrics of that song are beautiful.
So
Ugh.
good.
So I'm prepared. I'm prepared to sweat on others. I'm prepared for them to sweat on me. I'm prepared to sing karaoke. And I just think it's really humorous that like that was the turning point about a month ago for me. Like, I want to get the vaccine and I do want this like period of isolation
Yeah.
and lack of audiences and lack of like, I love being an audience member in Baltimore. It's such an easy thing to do, to go to your show, to go to theater shows, to go to poetry readings, and to not like feel overwhelmed that as a performer I'm also out at night performing. Ooh, my hope is that the shows will start at 6 p.m. There's no more than 2 or 3 bands on the bill. If you get the prize middle slot, that means you're playing at like 7:30 or 8. The show's over by 10 and everyone is in bed at 10:30 and getting a full night's rest.
I'm so with you on that. I'm loving. I did a matinee show a couple of months ago, 2 p.m. 2 p.m. streaming show, and I was just like, this is amazing. Did a full hour. I did a
Right.
full hour, just me, and then it was done, and then I had like the rest of the day.
Right. You like ate a leisurely dinner.
Yeah.
You did your work. You felt satisfied. You had done your work. You didn't have the stress of like showing up to the gig at 1 and sound checking and then having to leave and then wait until 10 fucking clock at night to play when you were like, I'm so tired and I
Yeah.
don't want to do this anymore. You know, just like
Yeah.
you're like just feeling terrible. And
Mhm.
yeah, I don't want to do that anymore. So
Yeah.
maybe I can make it like I don't think my like power as an independent musician has like exponentially increased magically like a Marvel comic book character like during the pandemic, like the all powerful Ellen Cherry. But I do know that like the one gig I have agreed to do in September has a contract, and like I can stipulate things on that contract. And you know, they're they're an earlier time type of crowd, but I was like, I'm gonna start like we need to push for this stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
Artists need sleep too. And if I'm gonna stay up late, it's only because I'm gonna be karaokeing, not
Yes.
because I'm carrying my guitar around.
So next time we'll share the stage and then we'll have karaoke immediately after. And then we'll go home and go to bed.
Yes.
Ellen Cherry, this has been so much fun. I've really enjoyed
I love
with
you.
you.
I
I
love you so
do.
much.
This has
I'm
been,
so pleased to be part of your show, Let's Exchange, and for such a lengthy conversation and to see your face on this beautiful day. Thank you so much for including me. I can't wait to watch it because it's going to be in a loop, right? And we can just
yeah,
watch it and
yeah, yeah.
watch it and watch
So I'll be streaming it, but then it'll be also be on a monitor in the gallery where the show goes up. So
it.
yes, you will be
Congratulations.
able to see it all. So thank you so much. You're the fucking best.
Um, I was going to say, I can't pick him up. There's a guinea pig sleeping right behind this computer, but I won't pick him up. He's got to get at least 23 hours of sleep a day. So
Yeah, I understand completely. We can do that for the next time you come on the show.
okay, have fun. I'll
All right,
talk to you later.
bye.
Bye.